Good morning, Michelle.
Good
Glad to
morning.
have you. And I am Dawn, your host here at Dawn, where we unpack different items that, particularly from my point of view, have to do with retaining women in senior roles of leadership. But we will speak beyond just women as we unpack the recent NPEA conference about educational access. So Michelle and I and our friend Will, who was popping in. Here he comes. Will, we see you. Gonna bring you in. All right, you should be able to pop in there, Will. Oh, Will, coming back for you, Will. All right,
Okay.
woo, Will's popping in the house too. So we have Will Torres and Michelle. Do you use both names, Michelle, at times to introduce yourself?
Just Gainer. The other one is too much of a mouthful.
Too much of a mouthful. Okay, well, thank you. Well, the three of us and many others attended the 2026 National Partnership for Educational Access Conference in Atlanta recently. And the three of us left knowing one thing, that the conversation can't stop there. We talked about collaboration. We talked about how do we keep all of this work going, collective power, shared purposes, that it's not option, that it's essential to advancing access in education. So thank you for joining us today. We have Will. For me, you're on the bottom there, Will, in our little pyramid of three. Will Torres is a education and equity consultant, a Harvard Graduate School of Education policy expert, committed to building partnerships that open doors to opportunity. And Will, you are hailing from Brooklyn today? Are you home?
I'm home. I'm actually in Ohio.
Okay,
Uh,
today you're in Ohio. Okay.
yeah,
Well, thank you for joining us. And
yeah.
Michelle Gaynor is a systems level change leader in the School District of Philadelphia's Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. That's a long title, Michelle, right? And are you in Philly today, Michelle?
Yep.
Okay, in Philly. Michelle is in Philly. And again, I'm your host, Dawn Y. Graber, the founder of Dawn, a culture strategist who focuses on building systems that retain high impact leaders. This conversation matters to me, not just as an educator, had many years in middle school classrooms, but because the majority of educational practitioners are women, and yet only, and Will, you and I had a conversation. I did some extra research on that, so that might be fun to talk about. But yet only 30% of K to 12 superintendents are women, and I found like 33% of college presidents and university presidents are women. Retaining women leaders in education also requires systemic change and stronger, more intentional support. But we are talking beyond just women leaders in our time together. That's just my heartthrob and where I come from. But there's lots more that will continue on this conversation from NPA. But first, let's get to know our guests just a little bit today. I have two questions to tee up if Will and Michelle, if you all would be game. The first one is like, what's your favorite go-to breakfast, and did you partake of it today? And then secondly, what just really lights your fire? It can be in education, or it can be just in general and such. Um, who I'll start even because you didn't have these questions, so this is really organic. So see what pops in your head. For me, it is often like oatmeal with hemp seeds and some berries, maybe a few walnuts. And I did literally have that this morning. Lights my fire. This morning, I had the privilege of driving some grandkids to school. I get to tend to do that. But today is one of the big state testings for a third grade grandson. So just that privilege of trying to encourage, the positive mantra, you're going to do great. You got this, buddy. I love being able to just influence and encourage young kids. So that comes to mind, lighting the fire of encouragement. Will, you want to go first? Is something pop in your head? Breakfast, and then what lights your fire?
Sure, sure. I'm in Ohio. There's a restaurant called Bob Evans I used to always go to with my grandmother, and they have like breakfast sausage and really, really fatty, cheesy, unnecessarily decadent breakfast food. So I love Bob Evans. I did not. I am in my on this side of 35. I usually don't have breakfast. I usually have a lot of water, coffee, supplements, and then usually eat midday.
Okay.
What lights my fire? The first thing that popped into my head was disco music. Like I'm really, really passionate about my 10 nieces and my mom and the work that I do. But this engine runs on chic and lots of funky bass lines and disco and even new disco, which is like young people making their best version of disco. So yeah.
Wow. There's so many types,
Yeah.
there's so many genres of music. I totally can't keep up, but okay. That's fun. That's fun. And Michelle, how about you? Breakfast and lighten your fire this morning.
So I also don't eat breakfast.
My question does not work for you two, does it? Well, not eating it. That's the answer.
But if I were to eat a breakfast, it would be like an egg, like some sort of egg, bacon, avocado, cheese
Ooh,
sandwich, like maybe on a
excellent.
bagel. So if I were to eat, I would maybe eat that. But I'm not hungry in the morning. Like
Oh,
I don't think I've ever eaten breakfast. Even as a kid, I wasn't a breakfast eater.
okay.
Wow.
Well, I'm learning more things. Not everybody's a
I
breakfast
know.
eater. Okay. Yeah.
And then what really lights my fire is really, having an impact on young people. I started my career as a fifth grade teacher in the school district of Philadelphia, and I was very lucky to have taught several cohorts of fifth grade. I taught for 8 years in North Philly
Yeah.
before coming to my current role in district central offices. And my very first class of fifth graders are graduating from college this year. So on May 14th, I'm very excited. I get to go to Widener's college graduation, and I get to see a young man who I taught in fifth grade walk across that stage with his bachelor's in computer science. And, just being able to see that so many years later, they're like, I really want you to be there. Just, that's why I did it. Like it was for
Yeah.
that long-term impact because, what did they say? Like people forget what you taught them, but they'll never forget how you made them feel.
Right, right, right. Wow. Yeah,
Maya
that's
Angelou.
impactful to be invited after so many years. I bet, Will, do you have some graduations too that are on your calendar?
Always, even more strange. There's a wedding in Arizona next month for a student who I worked with eons ago in Chicago. But
Mm.
yeah, that is such a treat to stay in their
Oh,
lives.
wow, that's really special. I know, I go to a large community church, and people are continually always saying, "Hey, Miss Graber, hey, Miss Graber," and I look at them and the age they are now, and they're carting their own children around. I'm like, "Hey, you can call me Dawn," but it's just kind of stuck in that middle school sort of language that they were used to relating to me. Well, we talked about we are here because we want to continue this conversation after our time together in Atlanta recently at the NPEA conference. And so I wonder if we could start off with just spending some time like what did we leave that just kind of kept swirling around in our mind that we're still thinking about? Maybe they're just conversations that we had with people, workshops we attended, some of the keynotes, they were so full of dynamite. Why don't we start this time, Michelle, with you, and then we'll bounce next time to Will to start.
What I keep coming back to following the conference is really an idea of like, how do we build coalition across districts, across states, across organizations around the country? Because what I realized is so many of us are doing tangential work,
Mm,
work that's tangential to each other. And we're making headway in our different areas of impact, but how could we exponentiate that impact if we were to work together and really sort of form almost like networked improvement communities and like really bring our ideas to like this coalition center where we could incubate them, go try them, and really share across the different organizations that we represent.
Mm.
Wow. Will, what do you say to that?
Yeah, I really I feel similarly about connecting with folks who are in the room. I think that NPEA membership and conference engagement is always shifting, and I think just
Mhm.
resisting the temptation to go to dinner with old friends, but to kind of link with different regions, I think is important. I also really feel compelled people who are decision makers in enrollment management and voices in the college counseling realm to NPEA. I feel like there are some admissions folks there and there are some college counseling community folks there, but I think there could be even greater collaboration and impact across CBOs. Um, but the big one um, is AI. I had a workshop by Dr. Shakri, and it just really pushed me to look into different tools, to think about the queries and the search terms, and what
Mm.
tool to use for what. I was sort of using Chat GPT as a claw hammer, and I was doing everything with it, right? I'd open a can of soup with that hammer, I'd unlock a door with that hammer, I'd butter my bread with that hammer, and it wasn't always going well. So I'm thinking about all these different tools that I can use for these different purposes. Um, and I'm also recognizing that I'm, again, on this wise side of 35, I want to be adaptable and I want to engage
Mhm.
and I want to work. And so AI is the big one that is really sticking to my ribs.
Okay. So we were there, and you're talking, Michelle, about just this sense of like, wow, so much tangential good work going on. How can we, this whole word collaboration, which was part of the conference, how can we build this improvement network and be able to, share what's working a little more quickly than maybe once a year conferences or just with our best buddies? Will, like you said, like how do we, continue to expand the family? And then, Will, you mentioned about getting more decision makers in the room too. But then you were talking about counselors and admission and such, and then this whole sense of AI. Yeah, do you have any thoughts on the whole AI sort of thing, Michelle? I'm not sure if that was a workshop that worked for you. I know you had your own workshop.
I did not get to attend the AI workshop. I'm not sure what I attended during that time
Yeah.
because but that would have I wish I could have because I had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Shakri and he was very cool. But also, I think that the use of AI, particularly not just in education, but in all fields, like it exists, it's out there. And I think what's really going to separate impactful, productive people from folks who struggle is going to be how well are you able to implement AI into your everyday professional practice because
Mhm.
it like Will just mentioned I'm starting to explore like Claude and like sometimes I use Notebook LM to like make little things. But I've been using ChatGPT for like everything and
Right.
it
Right.
doesn't always get the job done. And now I'm starting to think like, okay, well, what can I use for what? And how do I build sort of like that protocol that I fall back to that I reference when, oh, all right, I'm doing this. So that's like a Claude task, or this is a
Okay.
ChatGPT task, or this is a Gemini task. So I think that that's going to be really valuable. And I think in education, similarly, it's like, how do we make sure our young people are leaving high school and entering college and the workforce knowing how to use AI well to
Mm.
not to supplement what they've learned, but to augment what they've learned?
Ooh, okay, right. Will, I wonder if you'd want to tell us more about like what was standing out to you in terms of that leaving thought about AI. And the one thing I heard you just mention was the sense of being able to have the time with the relationships and the students, or I loved how at NPEA they're called scholars. I mean, that was kind of something I picked up as a little bit more of a newbie on the ground there. But did I hear you say that, hey, the whole sense of mastering, knowing when to use AI for what, which Michelle, I think is what you were kind of summarizing there, is so vital because it needs to allow me more time for that face-to-face human interaction. Is that what you were getting at too?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the workshop I also just learned about like the temperature of the question and prompt that you give AI, and when
Okay.
to use it and for what, and what's for ideation and what's for creativity and what's for kind of pressure testing. So that really gave me just more of a framework instead of just, asking Chat GPT, what should I do with 48 hours in Memphis, or, what are ways that I can cut my budget by $300 a week in New York, or really tangible cost of living kind of practical mass data pieces. But the other thing I really appreciated about the workshop was everyone in the room seemed really concerned with ethics, and I think that that is something that I
Mhm.
want to be careful with. One of my youngest friends is 29, and the zeitgeist around energy and water and the environment and AI and when to use it and if to use it is something that I'm wrestling with.
Okay.
Um, and then I'm also trying to think about how to leverage it in a way that still feels authentic to me, right? Like I wouldn't want AI to write my wedding vows or my eulogy or make my niece's college list, but it's nice to run those things through AI and look for tone or nooks that you may have missed. And
And
so
your best
I'm
dad or mhm.
yeah, so I'm really trying to be mindful about how and when and if to use AI, because I think
Right.
there are moments that I rely on it too quickly, and I really want to be mindful of our world's water.
Right. Well, okay. And what have you each learned, or what would you pass on about like the whole sense of AI and any implicit biases that have been already
Mm.
fed to it based on what data it has absorbed or been trained by and whatnot. What do we do about that when we're talking about access? I know for myself in supporting women leaders and building cultures that work for women, there's always that sense of, are you telling the truth? And, to the AI bot, and are you telling me the truth about how this affects women? And even that is, a broad term, women, right? We know there's so many
Mm.
intersectionalities for our gender identification. But either of you have anything to say back in terms of AI and caution or biases within or not?
I I would say that another thing from Dr. Shakri's workshop was just understanding what the design of it is. So if Chat GPT is trying to please me and appease me and reify my opinion, it's really, really important for me to, uh-oh, sorry, did I lose you for a second?
No, we're good. We can see you and hear you.
Oh, great. So, um, yeah, I, the two things I have to remember is that AI wants to keep me engaging with AI. And so I need to push it to push my thinking. And the other part is when I'm working with young people or scholars, that they understand who designed these tools, right? These colleges and universities were not built with someone like me in mind. So
Okay, right.
these AI tools similarly.
That we need to know that, acknowledge that, and then push it or see what it is different to for adding that sort of fact and such to our prompts. Michelle, anything else to just kind of close down our AI sort of section here?
I think it's because Will mentioned this. It's about like your querying. It's about like what you're feeding into it. Um, they say, especially with like data, garbage in, garbage out. Like you
Mhm.
have to put in really high quality prompting and give it very explicit instructions of the lens or how critical you want it to be. Or like you have to feed it all of that like it's a baby because it doesn't know. And you're basically building its brain so
Mhm.
that it will work, analyze, critique, and criticize the way you want it to. So if
Mhm.
you're not very intentional about building that, then what you get will be more biased than what you would otherwise.
Mhm. Yeah. So intentionality and knowing what we are asking and yeah, building that. Sounds good. For myself, 2 things come to mind. I happen to be in Michelle and Dr. Hope's workshop, and probably it's gonna be blurry, you can't see it, but I still have, they passed out a handout that was from Design to Practice, Applying an Equity Lens. And so it had some guiding questions, some key takeaways, and then they gave us different scenarios. And then it was like for each scenario is decision making people around the table with education, thinking of educational situations. It was our all stakeholder groups affected that are affected by the policy, practice, decision, or action at the table. How will the proposed policy, practice, decision, or action affect each group? Having to think that through. How will each of those different items be perceived by each group? Um, how will it worsen or ignore existing disparities? And based on the above responses, what revisions are needed to the policy, practice, decision, or action under discussion? So, Will, you were probably in a different workshop, or unless I'm forgetting if you were there, but it was really something I walked away with, like, yes, just questions again, the intentionality, like we're talking about even with the AI prompts, right? To not just make a decision that is going to affect all these different people without thinking through these different lens. I thought that was really significant, Michelle. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. I'm so honored that you saved our handout.
I did. I need it digitally, I think. And what else, any sort of additional or something else you want to make sure you get on the table from that you walked away from those few days in Atlanta and it's like, man, I'm still thinking about this.
For me, there were two gentlemen. They were from Democracy Prep, but I don't remember their names. I know one of them did Teach for America in Philadelphia, though, and that was exciting to me as a Philadelphian. But they shared this like student engagement audit, and it was really the way it was designed was like very clearly for their school and their environment and their curriculum and the way that they lay things out. But it really got me thinking of how do we sort of provide approach to schools. Philadelphia, very large district. We have 250 schools, I think, maybe a little more or less, but give or take, we have about 250 schools that serve students in grades K to 12. And how do we build a system, because it's hard to push into each of those schools to do this work, and like a lot of the departments that do the direct work of like student leadership, of student engagement, were smaller departments. So how do we build a system that schools can use to evaluate themselves for, am I creating somebody who is like a consumer? Am I creating students who are compliant, who are just fed information? Like, what types of engagement opportunities and what is the breadth and depth of that engagement that's going to build our students so that they have access to greater opportunities, so that they have the skills they need to be successful, not just at college, but say they want to become an entrepreneur, or they want to go into the trades and maybe start their own business. Like, how do we build the foundation for that through not just their academics, but through the experiences that we cultivate for them to engage in throughout their K to 12 experience?
Ooh, wow, that was rich, Will. Let's see what comes to mind. I want to give you that opportunity. What comes to your mind? How do we build experiences beyond just the academics? Michelle, you were asking. How do we build the experiences that will allow them? Can you finish the sentence again?
that will allow them to be successful and take advantage of opportunities no matter what avenue they explore post
Okay.
high school.
Okay.
Yeah, I think one part of it is like training the trainers and making sure that practitioners and folks who are providing direct services are thinking about the full slate of post-secondary options, even the ones that we may have a bias towards or against. So if I absolutely love small liberal arts colleges, which I do, I have to make sure that I also am well versed in trades and certifications and the armed forces and even the gap year, right? Ever since the Obama girls did a gap year, every young person I know thinks that they can just, go work for HBO and walk around Manhattan for a year. But I need to think about different programs that support people in gap years and why they do them. So one is making sure that practitioners and school leaders are mindful of the diverse array of post-secondary outcomes and options. I think the other part is just constant engagement and helping folks. I mostly help, communities and families think about applying to college and breaking into new financial spaces and life outcomes through education. But thinking about the qualitative side of your college application or any application is something that I'm really passionate about. So that's can be summer enrichment, that can be language, that could be massive online courses, that can be your personal statement, interviews, demonstrated interest. It's all the stuff that's not the SAT, ACT, or GPA, right?
Mm.
And so I think engaging that qualitative piece is important, and it develops the most full and dynamic people. I read applications for a really, really, really selective school this year, and everyone was admissible. Everyone had all A's. Everyone was top two in their class. Everyone was stellar. When everyone has perfect grades and scores, then what? And I think this engagement piece is part of that. Did they, go to circus camp? Are they learning Esperanto? Are they a caregiver and reflecting deeply on what that means for their community? Like, how are people expressing themselves when they're not in bed or in class? Is part of the question to ask.
So what age have you found or that you suggest is like a sweet spot? Like, how does this become kind of a normal um, experience for our students, our scholars to be able to dream of, I want to do that, or maybe I'm going to do this at this age or that summer?
I mean, I honestly feel like it's never too soon, right? When I
Never
worked
too
for a
soon.
small rural school district, part of the work was to have a fifth grade career day every year. And it was really fun to see students, light up when a veterinarian walked in or someone from NASA. Um, I think early and often we can talk about what we want to do and what experiences we may need to guide that. Never too early on the ground. It's like that doing community piece is active throughout. And whether it's, a fancy boarding school or a public neighborhood school, everyone wants to start this sooner. So the sooner you think about that passport or that framework or what those milestones are beyond the numbers, I think it's the better, right? Those toolkits can help students evaluate and just think about what they love and what they stand for and what they want to do. And I love to direct young people and all people to this concept of ikigai, right? This Japanese concept of what am I good at? What can I be paid for? What do I love? And what does the world need? If you can combine all those, then I think that you can have a really rich life, regardless of what your income.
That's awesome, Will. I was thinking too, like, where does, I mean, we think, counselors, of course, and whatnot, we know there's not enough. And so we have these additional programs. Michelle, even from a city sort of view, is saying, like, how can we help support our districts and these students? But the sense of just like, yeah, what do I as an individual, as this emerging scholar, right? These young age kids and also growing up, what do I like? I mean, what lights my fire? What would I like to do more of? Or let's try this. I don't know if I like this. I don't know if I like gardening or golf or science camp or, I don't know until I try these things. Right. Right. That's great. So that came out of Michelle initially, just thinking in terms of, something else that was birthed from you from that time together in Atlanta. Will, anything else you want to just say from the conversations or the input in Atlanta? And then we'll switch to just like Okay, so what are you each doing now? What do you want to do going forward? We'll close
Yeah,
with that sort of
I
conversation.
I think I think for me, it's sort of continuing to be self-aware about what you're inclined to do and what you really like to do. And I love to meet new people, and I love to generate leads, and I love to make a first impression. And so I can really make leave with a big stack of business cards, and then those become acquaintances at every future conference. And so I was really intentional to make a list and even to sort that list and to have a timeline and strategy for reaching out to people, because I still want to meet all the people, and I'm just like, a dog at a house party. Like I'm excited about people in general, but I also really like the idea of going an inch wide and a mile deep with folks and having, 3, 4 new connections a month and keep touch with those folks and see really quickly, can we further each other's mission? And if not, can I introduce you to someone who can? And then fly back to the nest to continue to ideate.
Right, right. And you are a connector, Will. I mean, you are that is something I'm learning about you, that you are this great connector between, partnerships and colleges and universities and such. So, yeah. I also was
Thank
leaving
you.
with just the sense that, like, for me, I came with the eyes of looking at women in the highest levels of educational leadership and doing some deep dives into what are the struggles for women in education compared to other arenas where I may work, where women may be less dominant in the field, whereas they sure are dominant in education. Glad to have you, Will. We need the men in education. And yet, I was finding that the women weren't, as I mentioned in the beginning, they weren't in the highest seats of power in terms of K to 12, superintendent roles for large districts. And Will, what I had found when after you and I talked more about colleges, this whole sense of 33%, and that's up. So I found that the realities were very similar for, and I'm talking broadly, women in leadership. Again, there's so many intersectionalities, but the challenges were very similar for the women in educational leadership that I had conversations with. And I was working at a breakfast discussion while we were there that I invited some people to a conversation. And we unpacked a little bit that it seemed as if it was the bottom layer of a cake, this framework I'm working with, that it's the bottom level of support in all these different arenas that needs to be strengthened for her to be able to have access to the highest roles that she may be gifted for and want in education, and to be able to stay there. So, Will, in answer to our conversation looking into universities and colleges for women presidents, where it dropped off were the R1 universities. So again, the
Mhm.
sense of like boards and groups, not necessarily just raising up the academic, like perhaps in the community colleges and the small liberal arts school, where there is a larger percentage of women, although still at 33%, as I found in the research. But not yet, 29%, something less than 30% at the R1 universities. And that makes sense, just like in these other groups that I would work with outside of education, for some just implicit biases of how the leaders are chosen based on their background or their opportunity and such. So that was something that I left with thinking, yes,
Mhm.
education, even though 70 to 80% are women, there still are the current situations where women find a lack of support to be able to go and be considered and stay in those highest positions. So that's who I want to support, are the organizations that want to keep just building the support so that everybody can be in the right seat on the bus, the seat that they feel that they are blessed with. So that was what I walked away with thinking of that. But let's think about what we're doing next now. You teed up a few ideas, the sense of like, oh, we need to have this network and work together more. We need to be able to continue to build the experiences so that their application shines in a way different than just all straight A's, like you were saying, Will. So what are we going to do next? Will, why don't you start us off? What's important to you in your role as this equity and education consultant, meeting with so many students I know recently? What's important to you to do next?
Yeah, I think just thinking sort of the scope that my work covers and where I want to be. So working directly with and supporting a student to me. Just met with one before this, and I'll meet with another right after. It's great to track these young folks, through college after working with them in high school. But I'm also about kind of pipelines with
Mm.
some institutions and some nets around it so that we can send more students to school in cohorts, so that we can make agreements so that school is more affordable for students and try to make the process a little more predictable. I mean, this landscape is really shitty, right? There are schools
Mm.
that are kind of consolidating, right? And then there are students who are looking for a nice place to land, and many are either thinking about their backyard, and there are others who are only feeling like the top decile get attention. And as someone who was not in the top quartile of my high school class, it's really important to kind of move the middle. And so I'm thinking about partnerships in a more strategic way, trying to connect people in formal
Right.
settings, and continuing to facilitate dialogue. I think the way that we think about the work matters a lot. And we have this really unique situation where an admissions office may have three 24-year-olds and three 60-year-olds, and how they work together is TBD. And so I really like to facilitate intergenerational conversations, whether that's with fifth graders and 10th graders or young career folks and more experienced career folks. I think that both the dialogue and the supply chain of education and the economy of education is something I'm really interested in.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. Anyone or any group as you dream that you would love to connect with more? Will, put it out there. They might hear.
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoy doing reader training for admissions offices and helping them kind of build their team bonds and think about the biases that they may carry into the admissions and selection process that we
Mm,
all have. Um, I really, really enjoy that work, but I also, I don't know, I kind of have an underdog chip on my shoulder kink, and I really want to help schools that are underrated, that should be better known, get their name out, whether that's through partnerships, whether that's through connections, or even just, hosting conversations. I really, really enjoy helping great schools find great students. And I think it's one of the few win-wins that I can genuinely name.
wow. And what level of schools are you referring to, Will?
Typically secondary schools, but
Secondary schools. Okay.
some schools that are K to 12, it's easier to sort of again work it in earlier and introduce these colleges, these ideas, these post-secondary pathways, these skills sooner and sooner in the process. And I think if everyone had the bandwidth, they'd all start this process a year or two sooner than they
Yeah.
already do.
That's awesome. I love what you were talking about, just the whole sense of training for the admissions office too. I mean, that would be similar to when I work with organizations in just their promotional practices, to be willing to look at those for how women and men, again, talking in generalities, tend to be evaluated differently for what we can do, right? This credibility tax that women tend to have put on us, where you have to prove something more and more. And so how does that even come into play for the admissions process, for how people are looked at? Yeah. I know you have a bunch of nieces, Will. So you've got the women, you got the women on your heart. I know.
Yeah, yeah, grew up with my mother solo. I mean, I think for me, it's really helping folks just understand that we all have biases and that our brains
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
fill in the blank machines, and that some of those biases are understandable. If you're biased towards straight A's or you're biased towards folks who took calculus or Latin, that makes sense. But it's making sure that that bias doesn't penalize the student who doesn't have calculus or Latin at their school. And so it's identifying those biases and thinking about how our biases inform the decisions we make. And at the end of the day, it's about making the best possible decisions that fit with your admission cycle so that you are
That's right.
recruiting, selecting, and yielding the best fit students possible.
That's right. That just and Michelle, we're going to pop to you then, and then we'll think about last things that you want to make sure you get out here today for extending this conversation. But Will, you just made me think for getting ourselves prepared to be able to make the best decisions possible. This morning when I was with my grandchildren, the idea came to me about like we need to just kind of shake some jello inside ourselves, and they were like, what, like it's good to be weird, right? I mean, it stands out. Remember what you say. And it was like, for every hole in us today that is not filled with love or doesn't yet know what to do, let's just like shake some love into all those holes like jello, and then we'll be ready for our day. So that popped in my mind, Will, when you were talking, at least for filling all those spots with the jello of love. But Michelle, as you think now going forward, what's on your heart and suggestions for action?
So something I've been working on that I really, really love, it's one of my core like functions of my job here at the district, is I host these community advocate circles where I bring together people from different organizations across the city of Philadelphia who don't directly push into schools to serve students, but they serve students and families like at their location, or they serve them through their services and supports that they provide. And how do we create a better network of support across like what we can do, what they can do? How do we bring that together so that we reduce overlap and we better meet the gaps and needs of our students and
Mhm.
families? And I think like when I think of coalition building, like I think of that project specifically and just how generative it is for me to really deeply engage with our partners across the city. And we just completed our first year of that initiative, and I'm really excited for what next year can bring to bring more partners to the table, but also to think of like how can I empower these partners to meet outside of the quarterly meetings that I host, where we do like work sprints and design sprints, and really grapple with some of the issues that our students face and come up with creative solutions that they can commit to doing together.
Mhm, mhm. And Michelle, I hear you saying, even as this project now is giving you life and engaging with the partners that help the students in Philadelphia, how can you, even in your office, help other cities replicate what you're doing?
Mm,
You spoke in the beginning more about like, instead of us all doing tangential, terrific efforts, how can we put them together? And maybe there's a way you can teach out and help provide your
love
model
that.
to other schools or to other
Love that.
districts. Yeah,
That's my
would love
goal with a lot of the connections that I made at NPEA, is to like have some follow-up meetings and really think about what would it look like for us to come together and
that.
think
Mhm,
about some of these big issues in educational access and how can we holistically address them.
mhm, mhm. I'm going to just plop to this particular slide now, if I can, and just invite any of our viewers to take this like 5-question assessment that I use with just helping organizations. Let's see if it works in educational settings too, to be able to understand when her foot is almost out the door, because it tends to be kind of a silent exit for most of us as women leaders. We aren't necessarily honest in our exit interviews, and we just kind of, start giving signs ahead of time before we leave. And it has to do with not having the supports in place again that will be able to retain her. We know that women work hard. That's not the issue. It's not that the woman needs to be fixed, but the supports again need to be strengthened. So this is just a simple little fun 5-question that assessment that will give people some hints of how they're doing in retaining their senior women and what might be ahead if they don't take action. And then I want to make sure we just go to this screen and fire up our final questions and such for persons viewing to be able to contact both Will and Michelle. And feel free to contact myself if there's a way I can help you think about building cultures that retain your high impact women. But let's think through. Will, what would you like to leave us with today? Tell us again best ways to find you and how you might be able to offer help to any of the educational partners or interested parties that are viewing us today.
Sure. You can find me at Mr. Will Torres, so Mr. Will Torres at pretty much everything: Facebook, Instagram, Gmail, LinkedIn. I really believe in this holistic approach that Michelle talked about, and I think that sometimes it can seem counterintuitive to get, a preschool teacher and an admissions officer in the same room, but I really think that this broader dialogue is going to serve us all better. Also working with a good friend from graduate school on a book about college admissions for Latino families. So really, really excited about that and waiting to hear back on our second manuscript. But you can reach me in any of the ways. I'm very grassroots and love organic connection. And yeah, I hope that I can be a help to someone somewhere.
Thank you. Thank you, Will. Michelle, what would you leave us today?
Well, I would love, if someone's interested in connecting with me, please, you can find me on Facebook, Michelle Golubish Gaynor. Or no, I'm sorry, LinkedIn. I don't know why I heard Will say Facebook. Oh, hold on. My connection just like
You're
froze
back.
a little.
You're back.
But you can find me on LinkedIn at Michelle Golubish Gaynor. You can also my best friend Amanda and I have started a business. We're building something I'm really excited about called Grade Level Guru. So feel free to follow that Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Um, I'm I'm not going to talk about that right now because it's not really what we mentioned. But if you're interested, check it out. It's very exciting. It's going to be very cool. But if you want to talk about coalition building, holistically serving our students across a variety of their needs, I would love to connect and have a larger conversation.
Wow. So I was attracted to Michelle and Will and others at the conference just for their spirits and their welcoming nature to myself. So I thank you each, Will and Michelle, for being kind to me and engaging in conversation. You're both very easy to work with. You're both brilliant. Will, you were on a panel up at NPEA, and I appreciated your style so much. And Michelle, I was in your workshop and appreciated the wisdom that you and Dr. Hope shared too. So thank you for your voice of including this wide group of people, the wisdom of all the different ages, the different sort of people. Will, I know you have talked before about like what you mentioned, people from all different walks of life, even not just, straight up who you think of in terms of education all the time, having wisdom. But I read about that a lot, the wisdom of being able to cross over with understanding and advice for one for another. Yeah, that's great. And Michelle, thank you again for that great work in Philly and the models that you are designing and the ability, as again, you think of the holistic child, to be able to network and even what's available across states, across our countries. I wonder if you would just each close with something you're so thrilled for the summer and that you're looking forward to, and we will let each other go.
Can I go first?
Sure. I stopped calling on you, didn't I? That was not very helpful.
Okay.
Sure. Michelle, what are you
Um,
looking forward to for
So
the summer?
something I'm super excited about, I'm going to share a little bit of personal. My son competes in Ninja Warrior. He is 8. This is his first competitive season. He started in like December, and he made Ninja Worlds, which are in North Carolina in June. And I can't wait to go see him compete. He just did regionals, and he had a personal best. He had his personal best performance, and I'm just so proud of him, and watching him grow
Wow.
and develop as an athlete is just it fills my heart with so much pride. So I'm
Oh,
excited for
that's
that.
nice. Well, congratulations to your son. That's
Thank you.
amazing. Will, what you looking forward to in the summer?
I just watch her, fully adapting and scrambling up and just support her because I know how. And I'm going to finally go to Africa. I'm going to go to liberal arts college in Africa, Ashesi University, um, and then enjoy food and culture and history. And I have some friends there, so I'm really, really excited to finally make my way to the continent. And yeah, just really pursue a personal passion of surfing and history.
Nice. That's awesome. Well, thank you both so much. For me, it would be some family time in the woods in northern Michigan. Looking forward to that. But thanks again. I hope everyone was able to get that information for Will or Michelle. If not, hit us up. This recording will be able to be available. You can get the information again, or we can help you with it at any time. But again, thank you very much. Have a great day, and let's keep
Thank
working
you.
on those partnerships and the collaborative actions so there's educational access for all. And we retain the women leaders.
Yes.